And we're back. Greetings, everyone. This is Lucian Vâlsan, broadcasting from Cluj-Napoca, Transylvania. Sorry for the delay, technical issues. Thank you, Google, for working like crap again. And the one laughing there is Mr. Jon Gunnarsson. Greetings, mate.
Good evening. How are you doing?
I was doing just fine until I learned that YouTube is acting out again, just like it did in my Hangout uh,
Hannah
with
Wong?
Hannah. Yeah, and yeah. So yeah, I was doing just fine until now when I found out that it's acting out on everyone.
Yeah, let's just get started with this show.
Yes. Yep. Go
First
ahead.
speech is yours.
Yeah, the first one is for me, znewsindia.com. I chose this link because it's the shortest version of this news. Moscow women in black severed child's head with kitchen knife. Husband's infidelity made her bad. Moscow, the killer babysitter for a 4-year-old girl revealed to the police on Tuesday that she beheaded the victim with a kitchen knife since was frustrated due to her husband's infidelity. She had also refused her husband's offer to accept that he had two wives. The accused reportedly went mad with anger after discovering that her husband in Uzbekistan had started a new family while she was away working in Russia. However, as per second theory, the 38-year-old nanny currently under police custody was angered by a Tajik boyfriend whom she had met here, according to Daily Mail. And the reason behind the anger was that all of a sudden she found out that her boyfriend was actually married, which was a shock for her. Escorted by armed police, handcuffed, Gulcheka Bobokulova, that's a very bizarre name even for Russians, herself a mother of three, showed officers in the Moscow flat where she apparently strangled Nastia Mascheyakova, who had learning difficulties before cutting her head with a kitchen knife. The little girl's remains were left in her cot. Earlier in the day, she was brought to the apartment where the murder was committed. She pointed to the block, the entrance, and the apartment by herself, the report said. The 30-year-old nanny further told the police that she was haunted by voices on the day of the murder. In scenes that shocked the world yesterday, the burqa-clad woman was seen walking the streets of Moscow, brandishing the head of the dead girl for an hour before she was detained by police. The macabre episode was caught on camera by passers-by with footage showing the unnamed woman wandering around in the street holding an infant's severe head high in the air. "I'm a terrorist, I want your death," she can be heard screaming in heavily accented Russian in a rambling tirade in which she appears to criticize democracy and talk about the end of the world. Investigators added they thought the woman who they said was from a Central Asian country had been working as a nanny for a Moscow family and had murdered a child in her care before setting fire to the family's flat and fleeing. That's very interesting.
Very interesting. Yes. In a sort
Ah,
of perverse, macabre
yeah,
way.
yeah. In this particular case, I think we may actually be dealing with a legit case of insanity. I mean, she claims she has heard voices, then it's the husband's fault. Then she claimed that she did it to avenge Putin's airstrikes, according to a yesterday testimony, uh, first covered by the Russian media and then eventually by Reuters. When she was arrested, she claimed that she had bombs and the end of the world is coming, so the police swept the whole Oktyabrski metro station, and of course they found jack shit. She had nothing. Uh, so yeah, in this particular case, we might actually be dealing with just an insane individual, and that's it.
Yes, but it's also still worth noting how um, even when in such a case, they're still sort of trying to find the nearest man to blame.
Absolutely,
Either it's
absolutely.
their husband or a boyfriend or something like that.
Yeah, it's never her fault. Now, I don't know. The insanity thing will be established probably 2 weeks from now, when the hearings about that will are scheduled to begin, if I am to believe the Russian media. But if she'll be deemed fit to sit trial, I expect to see quite more of these. I mean, even now, the top three theories, although the word theory is used incorrectly, the top three hypotheses are usually it's a man's fault.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call it an hypothesis. It's more like a wild guess.
Wild guess, justification, scrapping it to the end of the barrel, things of that nature. I mean, if this had been a man, there would be even uh, no question about maybe he was distressed by his wife at home or something like that. It wouldn't even cross the mind of anyone.
Yeah, I mean, if you claim that this was why I did the deed, it would be mentioned, but it wouldn't be so prominent. It wouldn't be in the right there in the headline.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it would be either barely mentioned or considered an indication that maybe the individual may be insane. Uh, and that's pretty much it. I mean, no one would uh, stop by to carry some sympathy. Oh, poor dude, the bitch at home was at fault, and so he snapped and beheaded a child. Nobody, no one would ever consider making such a ludicrous argument. Yet, for some reason, when it's a woman, if you apply politically correct lens to the Russian society, a very underprivileged woman, because Uzbekis are allegedly underprivileged for some reason, yet half of the downtown of Moscow is inhabited by Uzbekis, but they're somehow underprivileged. Uh, but anyway, so amazing, amazing, and to make things even worse, I mean, the only places in non-Russian that mention this, and of course Reuters mentions the case, but Reuters mentions everything. Uh, but the big media wasn't particularly bothered to mention this case at all, or when they did it with these funny tone. Yeah, well, the husband at home, because the Daily Mail is pretty much uh, on the funny side of the story. Uh, Whereas when a bunch of vandals, and I'm thinking here at the Pussy Riot, were rightfully arrested by the police, that was an international case that held the headlines for months. Oh my God! Look at this case in Russia. A bunch of vandals are destroying a church, and suddenly that's a problem because they're women. So that's very interesting. When women commit some sort of evil, it's news. When they commit other sort of evil, is only news just to look some justifications. Very interesting to notice the phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, the news with Pussy Riot was not what they did, but what the Russian government did to them.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it was very interesting. I wrote an article in 2012 about Pussy Riot, and when I was documenting, because that's what I do every time I write columns, I try to read as much as possible. Uh, then I noticed that 90% of the sources I was preparing were in Russian, because the non-Russian media, and particularly the English language media, didn't even bother to mention what the charges were. They were just this petty innuendo that, oh, there's a politically motivated attack and whatnot. And I'm like, what exactly is the article of the law? What exactly are the facts? No one was even bothered to give them. And the same is true in this case. I mean, if you look on the Daily Mail, the article is pretty much fact-free. I mean, yeah, they present you the video, but they don't tell you where she's from. It's, oh, a Central Asian country. Oh, really? Well, there's a lot of countries in Central Asia, and the information was already known. This, I don't know. I really don't understand this phenomenon. And this story pretty much confirms what has been going on in the Cathedral media for years. Why are we not willing to, present all the facts? When it was, I don't know, yeah, when it was the Paris attacks, for instance, or some other, admittedly bigger events, but still.
I mean, this is a rather salacious story. I mean, how often do you find someone, chopping off a child's head and then, parading around with it in the streets? I mean, that's not something that happens every day.
Which is precisely why I would have expected more thorough coverage, because
Yeah.
it's news.
I
But
mean,
for
if
some
if
reason,
if she if she like killed the child and then hid the corpse and so on, that's not that unusual. I mean, if that doesn't make the international headlines, that wouldn't be anything unusual about that. But in a case like that, where she's caught on video running around with this severed head, I mean that's definitely interesting.
Yeah, and it's definitely news for a country where beheadings aren't common at all. I mean, if the same story would have taken place, I don't know, in Rafaka in Syria, then I would probably understand why no one is particularly concerned. I mean, yeah, beheadings are happen every day, sadly, in that particular area. So, well, yet another one. Yeah, this time was a child, but still, just another beheading. But in Moscow, well, I think we're gonna have to look quite a lot in the archives to see when the previous beheading took place in Moscow. I don't think it happened quite soon. I don't think it happened very recently.
Yeah.
All right, moving on because we're going to get the chance to make more arguments as we proceed.
Okay, this next one is from The Guardian. Rotherham woman offered safe haven to troubled girls, then pimped them out. Karen McGregor, who has been jailed for 13 years after being convicted of luring girls to her home and pimping them out, had in recent years carved out a reputation as a prominent local campaigner who worked with an MP and Rotherham Council to set up a safe haven for vulnerable youngsters and their carers. McGregor, 58, who had worked in taxi offices in the town, created Kin Kids, a community support group for kinship carers, in 2013, just as revelations about widespread child sexual abuse in the town started to be properly investigated by the authorities. She spoke out in support of abused children and boasted that Kin Kids had helped families affected by the scandal. Kin Kids' fundraising shop even sold £1 bracelets with the legend "Justice for the 1400", a reference to the number of Rotherham children estimated to have been abused. But the image was far removed from what the jury heard in a grooming and sexual abuse trial. On Wednesday, McGregor was convicted of 4 offences against 2 victims, including forcing a girl into prostitution, false imprisonment, and conspiracy to rape. She was sentenced to the jail term on Friday. Kin Kids purported to be a support group offering financial, legal, and emotional support face-to-face and via a 24 helpline to carers like McGregor herself, who were providing full-time care for the children of relatives or friends who, because of illness, death, or prison, were unable to fulfill parental obligations. McGregor was an energetic, high-profile campaigner on behalf of abused children, even speaking out at 2 meetings with local voluntary groups in early 2015, attended by members of the government-appointed team sent to run Rotherham Council in the wake of the scandal, including the lead commissioner, Sir Derek Myers. The grooming trial, however, heard that McGregor offered her home to vulnerable young girls, then pimped them out so they could earn their keep. One of her victims described how McGregor was a motherly figure and a, quote, good listener who had taken under her wing at a difficult time in her life and treated her like a daughter. The victim said she was glad to be in the posh house after living in a children's home. However, McGregor's home turned into a terrifying Hansel and Gretel's house. McGregor persuaded Rotherham Council, the local Labour MP John Healey, and other local organisations to support Kin Kids. The council agreed to meet Kin Kids in October 2014 and subsequently gave it a licence to conduct door-to-door fundraising collections and awarded it a £2,000 grant from its Community Leadership Fund. Meanwhile, Kin Kids appeared to be growing, with reports of branches being set up with McGregor's blessing in Grimsby, Doncaster and Middlesbrough. The group was in the process of applying for a £10,000 lottery grant when McGregor was charged. When McGregor was charged in July 2015 with conspiracy to procure a child for prostitution, false imprisonment and conspiracy to rape, it appeared she had been hiding in plain sight. In hindsight, however, there were signs that Kin Kids wasn't all it seemed. Although it was often referred to as a charity and had some of the trappings of a charity, it was not registered with the Charity Commission. Although it boosted a 24-hour helpline, this appeared to be McGregor's mobile phone number. Hussein of Voluntary Action Rotherham said that at the time McGregor was making a name for herself as a child abuse activist, very few people in the local charity and voluntary sector had heard of her. Now he believes her apparently heartfelt activism appears to have been a cynical ploy to distance herself from her own abusive activities.
What a cunt.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, seriously. Wow. Uh, I don't know how to put it in order not to sound too insensitive, because I really don't want to be insensitive this time. But I have to say it. I mean, the reason she was able to get away with this for so long is precisely because she was a woman. I really don't think that a dude would have been able to get away with this for so long and no one to question his motives. Why do you want so many kids in your house? Really? Kinship relationships? Let's see what's going on in there. That that's how I think a dude would have been treated, uh,
Yeah,
and
probably.
and would have probably been caught earlier. I'm not saying that wouldn't have been able to produce a similar amount of damage. Maybe he could, maybe he couldn't, but he would have been caught earlier.
That's very likely, yes.
And of course, and I do subscribe with what Mean Gene says in the chat room. This is no surprise that this is in Rotherham. Rotherham, for those who may not know, for various reasons, although it's probably known even in Papua New Guinea now. Rotherham is that place where, for several years, close to a decade, there were gangs of Pakis grooming young girls for the most part. Uh, and the authorities knew about it and did nothing out of fear of being called racist. Uh, and this is not something that it's a conspiracy concocted by right-wing media. It's a governmental report acknowledging this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yet another stain on Rotherham.
Yeah, and it's as it says in the article that it's very cynical what this woman is doing.
Absolutely.
And it's sort of this sort of really cold-hearted and just plain evil sort of behavior that we're just
Mhm.
helping those children and so on.
Yeah, she played on all the people's emotions in there, and to be fair to the authorities in Rotherham, they were shamed into oblivion by pretty much everyone once the Rotherham rape gangs, groom gang scandal erupted, and that was exactly in 2013 when the scandal was at its height because the report had just come out. And they were trying their best to do something, at least to repair the damage that they themselves did through their inaction. So they were ready to authorize anyone willing to work to repair the damage. And I can understand, even though I don't agree, and I think they were completely wrong, and they should resign in their positions for doing so. But I can understand why they were so keen on believing this individual, and probably she wasn't the only one purporting to do the same thing, but obviously she was the only one that actually did conduct criminal activity. You know, they were like, well, this individual purports to help them, and we have to do something in order to start fixing at least some of the mess that we created. So I can understand why they conducted a more lenient background check or whatnot, and then uh, authorize her to do fundraising and whatnot. I can really understand.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Again, I'm making this point just to say that I don't think all of the people in the Rotherham authorities were bad people. No, 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 they were just ignorant. And once you get into panic, and you do, once your entire institutions are under fire by every single media outlet on the planet, uh, and if you really do care about these kinds of PR messes, because let's face it, maybe they should have cared a little bit less about that and a little bit more towards fixing the damage they created. But nonetheless, you try to do whatever it takes to, so, and you're more subjected to irrational choices.
Yeah.
Also, speaking of, she got away with it because she was a woman. When we were reading and commenting the previous piece of news, Shooter said something interesting in the chat room, and I want to read that. He said, probably he meant, if I were a terrorist commander, I'd recruit female terrorists to infiltrate another country because I'd know that the away country would treat them with kid gloves, thus buying me more time to move up operations or move pawns around. That's actually a good point. Although I would argue, and I know Shooter is listening, I would argue that that's probably not a good strategy in Russia. I mean, Russia has a lot of skeletons in its closets, but it doesn't really have this particular skeleton of just pretending that everything is just fine and treating women with kid gloves. Nah, not really. Not really. They were willing to chase the entire country to find those individuals belonging to the groups Vaina and Pussy Riot, because there were two separate groups. That's another aspect that the Western media doesn't tell you. They were willing to spend 6 months to track them down, all of them, and put them into jail for vandalism. If they're willing to do that for vandalism, well, I would argue that for murder they would at least be willing to do the same thing. I don't really buy the kid gloves thingy. At least not in the case of Russia. Probably in Sweden it's a very good strategy.
Yeah. Also another problem with that strategy is that you would actually have to find these women willing to do this sort of stuff, and well, there are some women, of course, who are willing to become terrorists and do these sorts of things. It is a lot fewer of them than men.
Yeah, there are fewer, but not. But when you're talking large numbers, uh, I mean, someone did the math. If only 1% of the Muslim world population is radicalized, that's still quite a large amount of people worldwide. And even if only 10% of those are women, it's still quite a large amount. There is a decent pool of qualified candidates if you really want that. They were able to find one for a suicide bombing in Paris in the aftermath of the Paris attacks, if you remember. The San
Mhm.
Bernardino shooters, one of them was a woman. So it's not really that uncommon as it would seem at the first glance. And these are just examples in the last, what, few months?
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move further. Oh my God,
All
yeah,
right.
go ahead.
Let's go to Germany from Mopo24. Sex flop. Unsatisfied 18-year-old girl beats up lover. Bad sex drove an 18-year-old girl from Munich to a white-hot rage. When her one-night stand partner didn't satisfy her, she assaulted him and severely injured the 17-year-old boy. The two met on Friday evening in a bar in Munich. After several drinks, they went to the boy's apartment to round out the evening. As the police report, the two had intercourse there. However, the 18-year-old seemed to be very underwhelmed by her partner's sexual performance and completely lost it. She threw objects at him, savagely scratched his neck, and bit him in the chest and various other body parts. Finally, she even began to choke the boy. He of course resisted her attacks, which led her to receive injuries all over her body. The police is currently investigating the 18-year-old for grievous bodily harm and her sex partner for actual bodily harm. From now on, the young man should perhaps think twice about who he takes home with him, or maybe he should just put in a little bit more effort next time.
Let me reimagine this story. Um, a woman went out to pick up a new guy in the club, and she took a new guy at home, and because he wasn't satisfied enough with her, he started attacking her with a knife. And of course, she defended herself, and she just happened to be, I don't know, an expert in Taekwondo, and inflicted more damage on him than damage that was inflicted on her. Perhaps she should be more careful who she takes home. Or maybe what is the other phrase at the end?
Or maybe you should just put in a little bit of more effort
Yeah,
next time
there you
she has
go.
sex.
Yeah, there you go. How does that sound? Because to me that sounds insane. Amazing, amazing. Again, much failure. That's why I put these these four. Actually, the next one is also similar. Uh, these three news one after the other. This constant failure, and no matter if you read the Russian media, the English language media, the German media, this constant failure of acknowledgement of female evil, it's getting annoying. It really is. Because, if you could understand it in 95 or whenever that individual, I forgot, the name of the study is called Effacing the Male, and it's about the Bosnian War, but I forget his name, god damn it. Anyway, when he was conducting that research, it was groundbreaking thing in 95, 96, 97. But, a generation has passed since then. And for some reason, most of the media seems to have learned exactly nothing.
Yeah, and in this case, the guy was clearly defending himself, but he still gets charged with a crime. Now, whether it's actually going to be convicted is a different case, but sort of in general, self-defense in Germany is quite risky because there are.
So you have a similar retarded law as we have, yeah.
There's sort of
you're supposed to provide equal amount of force or something like that, right?
Yeah, not necessarily equal amount of force, but like if you apply too much force that's not really strictly warranted, then self-defense is no longer a sufficient justification, which is sort of retarded because if you're actually trying to defend yourself and you want to maximize your chances of actually winning the fight, then you're not going to hold back.
Yeah, absolutely.
In an actual fight, when you are actually in danger, then you use whatever force is necessary to actually win. And if that, and
restrain the threat, yes.
And maybe a judge afterwards, looking at all the facts and so on, may be able to determine that this sort of force was not really necessary. You could have you could have used a little bit less force, sort of looking at it from hindsight. But at the moment, it's really difficult to judge these sorts of things, and it's I think just a really unreasonable standard that.
It is. Adrenaline also intervenes into the situation. You don't really think with the same clarity that you will think a day after the incident.
Yes.
And I know that from experience. But anyway, and not only that, in here, for instance, we have this thing in the law that you would have to apply an equal amount of force. What that means essentially is that if someone puts a knife at your neck and says move into that direction or give me everything you have or whatnot, and if you pull out a gun and shoot, you're guilty, and the one attacking you is not, because you used a superior amount of force. Now, thankfully, that has been toned down significantly by the courts, because one time someone tried the same thing to rob a house with a knife, and much to his bad luck, the house was owned by a professional hunter who just blew his brains out, and he got away with a not guilty verdict. So since then, the courts have been toning down this equal force thingy. But when it comes to physical fights, they still do sort of apply this kind of standards. And when you go and the courts will actually rationalize this in this fashion. Oh, but she was smaller than you. Yeah, but she tried to stab me. Yeah, of course I have superior strength, but then again, she shouldn't have tried to stab me. It's insane. It's insane. And to be fair, in continental Europe, besides the inherent sex bias, we also do have these kinds of retarded laws when it comes to violence, self-defense, and things of that nature. Most of continental Europe has these kinds of things.
Yeah, definitely. Also, I'm actually sort of positively surprised that she's actually being charged with a more serious offense than him.
So that means an inherent acknowledgement by the district attorney or the prosecutor that she did instigate the entire thing. But on the other hand, he went too far when he was defending. That's probably the case that the prosecutor will try to make in the court. Now, what I'm trying to get here, because I'm still quite naive, and I usually think that the prosecutors are there to serve the law and the interests of the society, which is obviously not true. But still, how was the wider community served with him being charged? Because I don't get that.
Yeah, I don't get it either. I mean, he was defending himself, and I mean, if you start hitting someone and biting them and choking them, then you have to expect to be met with a lot of force to prevent that. I mean, uh, maybe he was stronger than her and so on, but still, I mean, if you want to fight someone off and just sort of um, so that's, I don't know, grab her wrists and hold her or something. But if she's willing to bite you and so on, that's not very easy to actually subdue her without doing a considerable amount of damage, even if you are quite a bit stronger. So it's
Yeah, it's a very weird way of thinking things. Uh, anyway, let's get to the next one.
okay. The next one is from the Independent. Every man in Iranian village executed on drugs charges. Every man in an Iranian village has reportedly been executed by the government on drug charges. Um, Shahin Dr. Molaverdi, the Vice President for Women and Family Affairs, was arguing for increased provision for convicts' families when she made the admission. Quote, we have a village in Sistan and Balochistan, a province, where every single man has been executed, she told the Mehr news agency. Today their children are potential drug traffickers, either because they will seek revenge for the death of their fathers, or because they will need to financially provide for their families as a result of lack of support by the government. It was unclear when the men in the unnamed village died or whether the executions were carried out at once or over an extended period of time. Ms. Molaverdi argued that society was responsible for the families of executed convicts and said a dropped welfare program had been reinstated. Her comments were translated by the Iran Human Rights Group, which said several hundred people are hanged on drug charges every year in Iran, mostly for marginalized groups and ethnic minorities. Quote, Iranian authorities have reportedly admitted that the death penalty has not solved the problem of drug trafficking, but they still continue to execute people for drug charges. Mahmoud Amiri Moghadam, spokesperson of Iranian human rights, said. In 2015, the number of executions in Iran for drug offences was the highest in 20 years. The group is calling for the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes, UNODC, and other parties to stop providing equipment, funding, and technology to Iranian investigators until capital punishment is lifted. In 2011, Iran's Supreme Council of Human Rights said 74% of executions in the country were convicted drug traffickers, mainly handling opium being transported from Afghanistan and Europe. A spokesperson for the UNODC declined to comment on the specific case when contacted by the Independents, but affirmed its opposition to the death penalty in all circumstances.
Yeah, typically bureaucratic response. That's why I cut it, because it's a long paragraph that doesn't say anything. Anyone notice the source?
Vice President for Women and Family Affairs.
Yeah. Mhm. And this lady is the minister, is the president for Women and Family Affairs. What's that patriarchy again? Oh, and
Yeah,
uh,
probably she's is a president in charge of keeping women and families down.
absolutely,
That's,
absolutely.
that's probably what it means.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Then these harsh investigations apparently are at least in part funded by several countries of Europe. Uh, we'll probably do that to fight the patriarchy, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, if you just execute all the men, the patriarchy disappears.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Easy
Uh,
solution.
yeah, it seems perfectly legit. And you know, Minjin says in the chat room, absolutely on the spot. So the executions were unacceptable because it means that there are no men to support women in there. Get the fuck out. But that's exactly what she's saying, Mrs. Molaverde. By the way, is Mrs. allowed in Iran? I don't know. Well, it's Mehr news agency, so it's allowed. Um, uh,
What are you talking about, Mrs., huh?
uh, the vice president, Shani Dr. Molaverde, she's a lady. And that's exactly what she's saying. Oh my God, this is unacceptable because now there are no fathers there to provide for their families. So as a result, uh, everyone else needs to support them. Well, maybe that wouldn't have been the case if you hadn't killed all them, haven't you?
Yeah.
Just saying. I mean, and at first I thought that the news is bogus, but then I looked around. I have my sources, and it appears that it is. Most likely, it is true. Although Mrs. Molaverde was very evasive, but these executions didn't take place all in one fell swoop, but over a period of time, roughly around the last 5 years or something. So it didn't happen all at once. Nevertheless, I there are two theories here. One, that they are using these supposedly crackdown on drug traffic to persecute ethnic minorities or marginalized groups such as Zoroastrians and whatnot. Essentially anyone who is not the government's particular branch of Islam. Or the other one is that they're essentially having their own version of war on drugs with far severer consequences than in the United States. Or Sweden, for that matter. By the way, Sweden is like the United States when it comes to drugs. Just saying. Anyway,
Yeah,
I don't know.
but
I don't know
either
which
of
one
these
is true.
alternatives would be really fucked up. I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know which one is true. Probably a mixture of both. But I don't know which one of them is true. Go ahead.
and I mean, it seems pretty inconceivable that literally every man in this village was guilty of drug trafficking.
Yeah,
That
it's
seems
highly
rather
unlikely.
far-fetched.
Yeah, it is highly unlikely, although not particularly uh, impossible. I mean, I know several villages, I won't say where, but I know several villages where 100% of the population that is older than 16 is guilty of cigarette trafficking. So, I mean, if it is right next to the border of Pakistan, which is what they say, uh, or Afghanistan, yeah, whatever. If it's right on the border with that particular trade route, I can believe it that most were engaged in that. But I really don't. I mean, if that is the case, I really don't think it was only the men. And
Yeah,
the
yeah,
reason the
that's even
reason
more
I
unlikely.
mention the reason I'm mentioning this is that I've had several long conversations with our Iranian correspondent, Mr. Ali Mehrashpam, and he told me that he was just showing me 2 weeks ago yet another case of a woman caught with several kilos of heroin, uh, who was at first uh, given a death sentence and then eventually, after 2 years, released following family appeal or some similar thing like that, which apparently only works if you have a JJ in Iran. So, I mean, it, so much for that Iranian patriarchy, really. I mean, yeah, sure, it's really bad that they have a religious police that enforces the niqab. Well, okay, but on the other hand, it seems that women can do no wrong. Uh, Last year, they also had a very horrific case of murder, and because the murderer was a woman, it was an international outcry that she was given a death sentence. By the way, she was released in January, a few weeks, no, in early February, 2 or 3 February, the 3rd of February, so a month ago. Everyone forgot about that case. It seems that wherever you look, there is this complete and utter failure to recognize. Now, I'm not saying that drug trafficking is evil, but nevertheless, it's illegal in Iran. But for some reason, even the authorities aren't particularly happy to acknowledge that, yes, this individual broke the law. But when it's a man breaking the law or suspected of breaking the law, there's no problem to throw that book at him.
Yeah, and at the entire village.
Or the entire village, for that matter. Yeah, that's particularly extreme. But then again, it's Iran. I mean, yeah, I can't. uh, I can't say I'm entirely surprised. I mean, it has become increasingly more rare to see these kinds of things. But to be fair, these kinds of things have been uh, in existence in Iran for quite some time. These kinds of very extreme punishments. Yeah. But still, I mean, if this thing is universal, how the hell do you combat it? On what kind of values? If wherever you look there is this fundamental uh, refusal to acknowledge female evil.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, in this case, I wouldn't call it evil. I don't think that
I
drug
agree.
trafficking is necessarily evil, but I don't think it should be illegal. But um, sort of in a more general sense, I don't really know how you fight this problem that people just turn their eyes away or try to find excuses. Um, I don't know. I would guess that the best approach is just to point this thing out whenever you see it, as we are doing here on this show right now, and show people this sort of discrepancy that how women and men are being treated very, very differently in this regard, and sort of try to appeal to sort of universal notions of justice, and hope that this uh, sort of appeal to these kind of ideals trumps the sort of inherent Chinocentrism of our culture and of most cultures, and probably of human nature.
Yep, yep, yep. Amazing. And just for clarification, neither me or Yon are particularly egalitarian, so it's not necessarily a bad thing that men and women are treated differently in some situations. But when it comes to evil, well, probably a better crackdown on particularly evil things would be more in order.
I also I don't think that men and women are equal, or that they should be equal in all regards, but I do think they should be treated equally by the law.
Yeah, yeah, because we are all part of the law, whether we like it or not. And sometimes I don't. But anyway, sometimes that would be most times. Anyway, let's get to the next one, coming from Tromsø in Norway. Uh, I'll explain why this is of significance. The title is "We Must Stop Cutting Babies." The article is long. I've cut through it quite a lot. Ritual circumcision of male children in Norway has now been unoffered by public hospitals for just over a year. It's time to put a stop to this. It's time to ban it. The author puts a quote but never cites the source. If you're in doubt about where you stand in a discussion, you should always take the weakest party. Posterity will always judge you as having been right. Nothing symbolizes weakness, helplessness, and need to be taken care of stronger than children, in particular babies. In a society that collectively has come so far in appreciating humanism and protection of the weak, clearly there are exceptions, but they are just exceptions. It therefore appears as something of an anachronism that we not only accept but also facilitate and allow adults to cut the penises of completely healthy children. And solely because the baby's parents want to burn notice their children religiously for life and thrown in a way that is impossible to reverse in all hindsight. Sorry, I cannot really get this to go up in a moral calculation. Last year, Only, and only in scare quotes, 81 circumcision operations were performed in Norwegian public hospitals. 345 were performed in private clinics. According to an overview that Dagens Medicine has obtained from the biggest hospitals, none have been performed at the University Hospital of Northern Norway, nor at the Central Hospital in Bodø. The reason these hospitals don't offer these surgeries is that doctors don't want to do the procedures at all, and that the departments with long operation queues would rather prioritize surgeries of sick people with a real need for help. And it's understandable. A pressured healthcare should never give a priority to cut into healthy tissue on babies' genitals just because their parents need to follow traditions or religious beliefs. Now we need to take this a step further, reaching to the state to cease to allow this at all. I could have gone in depth here and coughed up the statistics on injuries and death, as well as the consequences that removal of the foreskin may have for future sex life, etc., etc. But anyone can find those statistics and reports that show how well and possibly how bad it may be to be circumcised and live with it. But there is no point to beat each other over the head with that, surely. In a civilized society, we ought not to cut healthy babies by force without medical justification. It really is that simple. That something is a tradition is really not a good enough justification for continuing the cut for continuing to cut in the crotch of babies. There are many traditions we have already gotten ourselves rid of, and against which we have amended legislation for the betterment of the vulnerable party, despite the fact that the church, the mosque, the Bible, or the Quran have resisted and tried to keep human progress from happening. In 1995, we forbade the circumcision of girls, and today we refer to it, and rightfully so, as female genital mutilation. Also at the time, there were many who pulled the tradition card, not least parts of the Norwegian left wing that has proved to be disappointingly relativistic when it comes to the traditions of the Islamic culture. Moreover, I feel that there is an elephant in the room here, particularly with the Norwegian right wing. These could be, of course, only wild guesses, but I am guessing, however, that if the circumcision of male infants had been an exclusively Muslim custom, the political right's will to fight against it would have been significantly stronger right from the get-go, and I would imagine that words like barbarism and far worse would have been adopted. Yet we continue to let them cut, and they're going to cut until somebody stops them. The low point has moved to an even lower point when Aftenposten, in an editorial in 2013, pulled the Holocaust card on us and wrote that, quote, "Even if the purpose is to protect children, a Prohibition Act is still seen as a new attempt to expel the Jews from the land," end of quote. Please, let's not go there. This card really just serves to pollute the debate and sink to new lows just to imply that the opponents of circumcision are indirectly pushing for a continuation of National Socialism. I wasn't a Nazi, for example, at last time I checked. Therefore, we are back to square one, namely the question of who is the weakest part here, which is, of course, the baby. And the deed to slice up the perfectly healthy penis of a baby then becomes not something morally stronger, founded in reason, if it happens in the public sector. It only serves to legitimize wrong deeds in the wrong direction. I admit, I am an extremist. I'm the extremist who thinks that older people should be allowed to do just about whatever they want with themselves and others, as long as there is mutual and crystal clear impression that everyone involved is rational and mentally healthy. People are different, and many may need or want to do much that I personally find both strange and incomprehensible. But not when there are babies in the pictures. Babies should be given care, comfort, food, and safety, whatever your religious or non-religious faction you belong to. In these pictures, scalpels and knives of religious traditions simply don't fit. And here comes the campaign to give the babies that right.
Okay, that's a
Well,
nice article.
to make
I
you...
don't really agree with this quotation that you should always be
Yeah,
should
neither do
always
I.
side with the weaker party. I mean, that's this
Yeah,
sort of heuristic can go very wrong. I mean,
yes. I,
for example, that would mean that, for example, you would have to side with neo-Nazis in Germany because they're a universally reviled group, and there's all sorts of laws specifically targeting them and restricting their freedom of speech and all sorts of other things. But that
well,
does
I would side on...
just because they're persecuted doesn't mean that we should defend them or that they are right or anything like that.
No, but I wouldn't side with them if they would file a suit to broaden speech. I really think that the most appalling speech imaginable should be legal and protected.
Okay, I agree with that too, but still, that doesn't mean that that we should be on their side in general just because they're weak.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you take that thing with take the weakest party's word or whatnot, take the side of the weakest party. If you take that to much further extent, you should side with cancer as opposed to non-cancer because cancer is being oppressed and is weak. Yeah, no.
Those poor cancer cells, they just want to procreate. I mean,
Yeah, and you're
they're not
putting
trying to.
radiation in it. Yeah, and you're putting radiation in it. Shame on you. Yeah, I
I mean
agree
that
that
that's this huge body, and they just want to have a couple of cells, just a little tumor. Come on.
yeah, it's very radical to be against that. Yeah, I do agree that the quotation is poorly chosen, and given where it's put in the article, it may have been put there by an editor and not by the author. Nevertheless, the reason this article is particularly relevant, in addition to being generally a good article, is that it comes from an area that has de facto banned circumcision in Norway. The northern part simply that there are no private clinics and no state clinics that provide it. And this I read this in the forums. You know, some of the Muslims and Jews in the area eventually ended up to the conclusion, but why bother to cross the entire country to go to Oslo to do it? Forget it. And they essentially didn't bother. If it wasn't available there, I'm speaking about families that just had newborn boys. So, you know, this may have actually had already some effect. There's also the precedent in Denmark where the Jewish community in Denmark has pretty much de facto abandoned circumcision altogether, even though there it was a community initiative rather than a supply and demand issue. This is particularly relevant if it's the same area that's now trying to lobby the state of Norway to ban it in the entire country. I have to admit, this probably be one of the few cases where I would agree uh, generally with the Norwegian state doing something, because the Norwegian state usually gets things wrong on social levels, very, very wrong. But in this case, if they would actually ban circumcision, I would actually agree. I think it is within the legitimate roles of the government to protect anyone, not just babies, from bodily harm.
Yeah, I guess a broken state is right twice a day.
It's more like twice a century, but nevertheless, yeah. uh, if this is getting steam, and it seems that it is, I mean, this article was largely shared. They're preparing a formal petition and whatnot to lobby the parliament. Uh, if this thing is getting steam, Norway could actually lead the way. Because, you know, in Norway, as opposed to Germany, there is no strong lobby to pull the Holocaust card too much. I mean, Aftenposten did it once and they were widely ridiculed for doing so. And even now, this article quotes the same article in 2013. Everyone is ridiculing Aftenposten for that article. So it's not really a particularly popular argument, as was the case in Germany.
Yeah.
And with that out of the way, I really don't think how will the pro-circumcision lobby frame their position, because, you know, the physicians don't really want to do it, because, you know, 345 in private clinics, that's what, 10 physicians, maybe 15 tops. Yeah, 15 versus 100,000 signatures. Yeah, I don't know how who will the parliament listen, but I sincerely doubt it's going to be the physicians.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really hope they succeed with their campaign. I really do. And then it's going to be nice, because once you have one example, then it's easy to say, well, they did it there. And the nice part is that you can go after the whole political spectrum, because what are the leftists going to say? Because, you know, if Russia would ban circumcision, they would say, oh, well, Russia is reactionary and whatnot. But when a Scandinavian paradise does it, how, what are you going to do then? Because let's not
Yeah,
forget,
that's
it's very popular among the left to give examples from Sweden and Norway, and they usually pick the worst examples possible. Um, just the other day, someone was telling me about the greatness of Swedish healthcare system, which is funny because in January the Ministry of Health in Sweden just announced that now there's more private clinics than state clinics because the state clinics suck. so, so it's
oh,
very interesting.
presumably didn't announce that the state clinics suck.
No, they said that just their quality to the well, they use some politically correct jargon, but you get the point. They suck.
Yeah.
In they had the state clinics have fewer beds today than they had in the 70s, and in the 70s there were 6.5 million people in Sweden, and now they're 10. So just so you can get the point.
Yeah.
Just completely incapable of handling the situation, which is to be expected, of course. Okay. Good luck, Norway, with the campaign. Hope we'll hear some more about that. So let's get the next one.
Okay, the next one is from Germany, from the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Where are the women? Can it really be so difficult to persuade someone to become CEO of the Commerzbank? After all, things aren't looking so bad anymore for the bank. As a parting gift, Chief Executive Martin Blessing even promised the shareholders a dividend after years of misery. But who will succeed Blessing, who ruled out who ruled out a renewal of his contract months ago to seek his fortune elsewhere? Even within the company, Klaus-Peter Müller, chairman of the supervisory board, is coming under criticism for failing to find a replacement. He is going to find someone by the general meeting in April, he recently told Commerzbank employees via their intranet. He has spoken to, quote, external as well as internal candidates. According to him, at least a short list has been finalized. What hasn't been officially confirmed, but is true nonetheless, is that there are only men on that list. This didn't go according to plan. Müller, an outspoken proponent of women's advancement, would have liked to have a female CEO. The first big German bank with a woman at the top. That would have been a sight to see, and it would position Commerzbank as very progressive. Only they didn't find anyone. Despite being supported by headhunters, the search for a woman was in vain. Now the bank has given up. The next CEO will be a man. Nothing to be done, people. Nothing to be done, people closest to the supervisory board are saying. The set of female candidates, they say, is rather small, or more precisely, empty. After all, they are looking for someone who knows the business and has proven that he can lead a corporation with tens of thousands of people. That's why women from the second tier of leadership of governors of foreign banks in Frankfurt are out. The Swede Annika Falkengren, CEO of SEB Bank, who was rumored to be a candidate, might fit those criteria, but she's missing one crucial criterion. The CEO of Commerzbank needs to be able to speak German fluently. That narrows down the search considerably. And I've left out the last paragraph where there's talking about more candidates who are also ruled out for various reasons. So I just included this story as another example that no, there isn't really a glass ceiling. It's just that there aren't a lot of qualified female candidates for these top positions.
Even when
And
you actively discriminate against men,
yeah,
there may actually happen to be the case that there simply isn't a better person, no matter how much you try.
I mean, even I mean, at least as long as you try to go for this sort of idea that you have that you prefer female candidates if they are equally qualified. No, I mean there isn't really any sort of thing as equally qualified because
Exactly.
uh, if because there's just so many different criteria for qualification that you're never going to get precise equality. You're just going to get two candidates that are sort of similarly qualified.
Yes.
Um,
And
but
something's gonna give.
even if you want someone who's sort of similarly well qualified, and you're looking for a woman, and when you want to prefer a woman in that case, it still can be done. So if you actually want to hire a woman in one of these top positions, then if you actually really want to do that, then often you have to go for a much less qualified candidate, which in this case, Maspen was not willing to do.
Yeah, you know, uh, when I debate with local feminists in here, I actually like to bash them with this one because we actually did have female CEOs, three in banks actually. Two of them were complete and utter failures, and, and one of them was actually quite decent. No, seriously, very, very serious lady. And but then again, when she was asked about discrimination in the workplace, she bombasted something like, "Feminism is cancer. There is no discrimination. Cut that nonsense." So obviously the feminists don't really like her, even though she's a very successful individual. But nonetheless, the justification there now, but Commerzbank could be more progressive. Well, I think it's more progressive not to let down your clients,
Yeah.
methinks, rather than practice this slimy tokenism there. Oh, look, we have a lady as our CEO. So what? Amazing, amazing. To their credit, they weren't willing to be subjected to further bullying and crack down on the standards like they did in Norway, it's a good thing that they did because they gave us a new term, the Norwegian golden skirt syndrome. Uh, Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to keep on using that on everyone else. So, in a way, that's good. Now, obviously, if you're a Norwegian business, you're not particularly happy. But, well, sometimes there's trade-offs to proving ideology wrong. The next one isn't.
Speaking of Norway, let's go to the next one.
Yeah, the next one isn't funny at all. It's something we've heard a similar case in France a while ago. You'll remember definitely once I mentioned it. Title is Refuses the DNA test from the Norwegian state agency NRK. In the pursuit of a rapist, the police have requested voluntary DNA samples from several hundreds of men who are born outside Norway. 29 years old, Samadra felt suspicion and refused. I heard about the police letter because someone who did not quite understand what it was contacted me and needed help as an interpreter. A little later, I got the same inquiry myself. Samadra is one of the about 400 men in Romerike who is also asked to give a voluntary DNA sample in connection with the investigation of a rape case in Lillestrøm in September. A woman in her 30s on the way home from a club was threatened by a man with a knife who took her to an abandoned house and raped her. According to the woman, the perpetrator is in his 40s with dark short hair with a little veil leading and bad teeth and was 170 to 180 centimeters tall. He had a foreign appearance and spoke Norwegian with an accent. Through forensic investigations, we have found DNA samples that we believe are associated with the perpetrators, and we are now carrying out a DNA project, said the police attorney Line Tushberg. She explains that the police have made a list of persons connected to Skedsmo and have taken a look at the case that cannot be at those that cannot be excluded from the description given by the accuser of the perpetrator. The lawyer says that they have collected 305 samples and only a very small number have said no. Some other are he's one of the few. He asked rather a witness questioning by police this week. Then they could see for themselves that I simply do not fit the description of the perpetrator. There must be a better way than taking a DNA sample. Rock says that many in his family have given samples, and he's the only one who said no. I would not say that I feel discriminated against or something, but I really do question the method. The police say that they understand that some may find it uncomfortable to be subjected to such an inquiry. We have been very clear, both in the letter and conversation, that at this phase none of them are suspects. It is very important to us that they understand this, adds Tushberg. We are very pleased that the vast majority have been cooperative and positive to help us. Many people have been understanding and said things that, that could have been my daughter and my wife, and therefore wanted to contribute. She stressed that these tests will only be used to compare with the DNA findings in this specific rape case. The samples are not filed in any registry and are not sought against previous records. Yeah, let's get this clear out. If I were in this guy's situation, I would have said no as well.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And no, I'm not buying this. Oh, but it could have been your daughter or your wife. No, 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 absolutely not. No. If you really want that from me, no, put me under formal child charges. You'll have to make me. Uh, I will not see. I would never do that. Provide voluntary DNA samples to the state. Absolutely not. No.
I mean, they say that they're not going to compare them to any previous crimes and not going to save the data and so on. But maybe they're going to do it after all. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, and I would rather start from a distrust position. I mean, the government never starts from a trust position. It always assumes that I'm a criminal. Definitely the Norwegian government, and especially in family affairs business. But anyway, so why would I trust them? Maybe maybe this Line Tushberg is telling the truth, but can I have any guarantees that her bosses won't decide something else? I mean, after all, she's just the public face of the police. The actual clerk that deals with these physical evidence, we have no idea what he's doing there.
Yeah, and I mean, and even if the government in this sort of case is caught lying, it's not like uh, you can actually do anything against them. I mean, maybe possibly you can charge them in a government court, but it's the only way of getting redress against the government is to use the government's own methods, and that's why you always should be very suspicious what people in the government tell you, uh, because they have all the power, and also of course they have been caught lying in many cases in
Hmm.
the past, so we should not trust them. It's perfectly reasonable to distrust them.
Yes, and I don't remember who said it first. It definitely I heard it from Reagan first. The worst words in the English language is "I'm here. I'm from the government, and I'm here to help," which pretty much applies to Norwegian as well. Jeg er fra regjering og jeg er her for å hjelpe. No, I don't believe that. You may say you want to help me, but maybe just maybe try not to help me, because if you don't help me, I just happen to do better when rather than when you do. Uh, the difference, however, is that in France they tried to force those who said no, whereas in Norway, at least for now, it doesn't seem to. The police doesn't seem to be so willing to try to force them. So I guess that counts for something.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, I've seen individuals commenting on this as, "Oh my God, but why not? Why? I mean, what do you have to hide?" And I'm like, "Yeah, well, I do actually have to hide. There is no such thing as I have nothing to hide. Those who say that are stupid. Everyone has something to hide. Literally everyone. There is no such thing as I have nothing to hide."
Also, it's worth pointing out that with how many laws there are in most modern countries, it's impossible to know all the laws.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
even if you're not aware of committing any crimes, you may well have accidentally committed various crimes, and it's actually quite likely that most of us have committed several crimes unknowingly because there's just so many laws that they just don't know.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, I always joke that if I were to actually learn all the laws, I'd probably learn that I'm committing 10 or 11 crimes every day. But yeah, no, this thing that I have nothing to hide, no, you do. Of course you do. Everyone has something to hide. Now, and I also agree with this chap that, he makes this very compelling argument. I'm not saying that I feel discriminated against or something, so that means he rejects identity politics, but I do question the method, and he's correct to question it. Uh, do you think that the rapist himself would be so willy-nilly? Oh my God, they found DNA. Yeah, let me go and compare and see that. Really? Who?
I guess it's sort of a method of narrowing things down. You can sort of rule out a number of suspects. I mean, they say that they're not suspects, but they are suspects, or at least they're being investigated. So they can rule out a number of suspects and then do some more investigation on the people who refused. That's what they expect to do.
Yeah, but then again, if everyone refuses, or because they say, oh, only a small number said no. Well, actually, it was 100 and something who said no, so it
And
wasn't
how
actually.
and how
It
many did they
wasn't
ask?
400. 430 was in another
Okay.
article claimed. So yeah, a quarter said no. There's still, it's 100 people. I mean, yeah, you did narrow it down, but it's still 100 people to
Yeah.
investigate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not particularly helpful. And these kinds of comparison and DNA things aren't exactly cheap either. And it's a lot
That's
of
true.
resources. And I do agree with this chap. The method doesn't seem to be particularly efficient. But anyway, let's get to the last one from rather the silly place. Yeah, coming from the British Brainwash Corporation, the girls in tech competition won by a boy. EDF Energy has been criticized after a 13-year-old boy won a competition that was part of a campaign to attract teenage girls to the fields of science, technology, engineering, and maths. Children were asked to think of ideas of a connected home bedroom product. EDF said that while its Pretty Curious program is still aimed at girls, the UK competition was later opened up to all 11 to 16-year-olds. It continues to share the same website and branding as the girls' scheme. The BBC understands that the decision had been made to open the competition up to both sexes, yeah, they say genders, no, both sexes, in the interest of fairness, and that the contest attracted a couple of hundred entries. Following the 3 events held in the United Kingdom for girls last year, the contest was extended online and made available to boys as well. The winner's idea was for a games controller which harnesses kinetic energy from thumb action using wind-up triggers. 3 of the 4 runners-up, whose ideas included smart curtains, a smart fridge, and a sleep monitor, were submitted by girls. We were really impressed with the ideas which were submitted. It's exciting to see so many young people getting involved in this type of initiative and engaging with STEM. We hope more young people will be inspired to pursue STEM subjects at school and consider STEM careers in the future, said Amy Edmundson, an electrical maintenance technician at EDF. Congratulations to the winner, but I'd love to hear from EDF how the winning solution meets their stated aim for the competition, said computer scientist Dr. Sue Black. It is taking me a bit of time to work out how this result will change girls' perceptions in STEM. In a tweet, EDF said that while the aim of Pretty Curious was to encourage girls into STEM, the Pretty Curious Challenge was a gender-neutral competition. It added the winner was shortlisted by a panel of judges, including the all-female winning team for our Pretty Curious Glasgow workshop. Sir Chairman Anderson, who founded the annual celebration of women in STEM, Ada Lovelace Day, told the BBC she had reservations about the Pretty Curious campaign from the beginning. EDF Energy chose to link appearance and interest in STEM through the title of their campaign, despite many people pointing out it was demeaning to girls, she said. Rather than challenging stereotypes, the focus on girls' looks rather than their intelligence reinforces them. EDF Energy have failed to understand both the nature of the problem of women in STEM and the negative impacts that their publicity stunt may well have on girls who took part with genuine enthusiasm and excitement. So I tried really, really hard not to burst into laughter during reading the article. Uh, yeah, I fail to see the problem, really. I mean, why is this news?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for a boy to have won that, when they say that they want to promote women in STEM and so on, uh, um, his work was probably much better than the runner-ups.
Significantly
That
better,
would be
yes.
my guess.
Well, they even say what it included. I mean, strictly from a technical standpoint, making a smart fridge is easier than building a device that takes kinetic energy from the thumb. It's just really that simple.
Yeah,
So
I don't know what smart involves. So that would depend on what they mean by
yeah,
smart.
unless you can make a fridge that can travel all the way to New York, fill itself, and then come back home, then yeah, I mean that would be the kind of smart fridge that I would award any prize available on the table. But unless it's that, no, usually when you hear about these things, smart something, it's usually the same old something with an operating system that does usually the same old something. It's like there is actually smart fridges available on the commercial market. Now, why in the world would you buy a fridge on which you have to reinstall the operating system once in a couple of years? I don't know. Why the hell would you need a hard disk in your fridge? I don't know. But this kind of smart anything has become quite a trend.
I also noticed that it's rather problematic that uh, that this competition reinforces gender stereotypes by having the uh, the boy have making a video game controller and the girls making something smart fridge and what was it, something with curtains.
Yeah,
That's
kitchen
all
related
very
stuff.
very stereotypical. That's very problematic.
Yeah. So. Yeah, no, it is true, and I'm not surprised at all. And I know this is very politically incorrect to say, even in some corners of the non-feminist community, but at the end of the day, most females are women and most males are men. And no, calling them cisgendered isn't going to help. No, 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 no. Most people are normal. And part of being normal, yes, it does also contain rather stereotypical, yes, interests. So what? I don't think it's problematic at all.
Yeah, neither do I, but it's just sort of curious that they failed to point this out when there would have been a perfectly good point for them to make,
If we look on Tumblr, that definitely someone has already made this
probably.
point. Yeah, but the BBC is still trying to maintain some sort of impartiality here. Uh,
After all, the BBC is also quite problematic.
yeah, to be fair. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't understand the. To be fair, I don't understand the whole idea of having let's have a girls' competition on whatever. Especially when it comes to things that aren't particularly, like chess or these kinds of science fairs. Why? I mean, I can understand if it's, I don't know, Greek Roman fighting, that you wouldn't want 13-year-old girls fighting 13 or 14-year-old boys. Now, I can understand that, even though I'm not particularly in agreement with that either. But at least I can understand the argument. But in here, what's the argument?
Yeah, I mean, having this sort of gender segregated competitions is saying that, basically, if you win that just means you're pretty smart for a girl. I
No.
mean, it's just having these kinds of girls only competitions sort of basically automatically makes them second tier. It's
Yes.
kind of like the Special Olympics or something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty much like the same thing with the European Girls Mathematics Olympiad.
Yeah, it's really demeaning to girls.
Yeah, it's if you remember when there was that stupidity with, oh, by the way, this year the European Olympiad is going to be held in Romania. This is going to be fun. I'm definitely going to send a spy in there. No, seriously, I will. But last year when the news about that came out, everyone was like, "Well, what's next? The International Olympiad for Chemistry, category 80 kilograms." These kinds of competition that are allegedly brain-related competitions, yet where they introduce these kinds of immutable characteristics into it, such as the competitor's sex or the competitor's ethnicity, uh, it, it's very it's problematic, and it's insane, and I don't think it's efficient either. Other than, I don't know, the efficiency of being patted on the back for how progressive we all are. I guess that counts for something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the idea is here to that you have these extra competitions to encourage more girls to get into STEM, and if you have sort of competitions that are easier for them, that makes it a bit more attractive. Um, but then again, why would you want that? Why not make it more attractive for everyone?
Or
Uh,
why not be so particularly concerned about attractiveness and be more concerned about, well, oh yeah, the quality of the competition.
yeah.
Mm, I'm looking in the chat room, and Shuta says this article would be better if it was plagiarized from a boy. Minjin says, well, Pretty Curious is a campaign that reinforces gender roles. Lol. Can a boy not be considered pretty curious regarding identity politics? Are boys not allowed to be pretty? They're assuming also that this boy identifies as a boy.
Yeah, yeah, it's true, definitely true. It shouldn't assume that. That's cis sexism.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's what's the other term? Heteronormative. I don't know why, but it
I
doesn't
mean,
matter. It
they're
fits.
not assuming anything about his sexuality.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Um, Although there is there is that thing with having a gay friend. So if he's not heterosexual, then he's not oppressing anyone. So how do you fit that? Well, you need to put your intersectional glasses in order to understand that.
Yeah, yeah. You always need to put in your intersectional glasses.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I mean, we're laughing here, but just today I think it was in Göteborgs Posten in Sweden, but I didn't have time to read the entire article and decide whether it's newsworthy or not. But I read the first half of it, and a feminist was genuinely complaining that the young prince of Sweden, is is being oppressed because he can't choose his gender identity, and everyone just says that he's a boy, and they're inflicting that upon him. And that was like, really? This is what intersectionality does to the human mind. I mean, you genuinely end up saying that the fucking prince is being oppressed. And the prince of Sweden, mind you, not the prince of, I don't know, some petty feud in Somalia. No, 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 no. The prince of Sweden. I mean, really.
I
That's
mean,
how far you can get if you look through problematic lenses.
here we have this person who, by all the sort of traditional metrics, is one of the most privileged persons on earth. I mean, he's white, he's male, he's fucking royalty. He he of course is wealthy. Um, Basically, on all these kinds of
Will quite
uh,
literally inherit a country, yes?
yeah. But by all these sort of traditional measures, he's extremely privileged, but still there's this still we can find some way with that he is oppressed. That they inflict being a boy on him.
Yeah, can you imagine that? And let's not forget that this is not the first, although this is the first time I've read someone in a news media that is not particularly feminist. I mean, Göteborgs Posten is anything but feminist, making this particular kind of argument. Because when the British royal family had their child, there were the Twitizens, or the Twitterati. What is the expression? Anyway, the long stream of twits on Twitter uh, were expressing a similar opinion that the gender of the royal baby should not be revealed because maybe Z will want to choose something different later. Uh,
Oh, so agenda.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I was like, really? But at first I didn't want to believe it. I mean, like, come on, no, people can't be that idiots. But now, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe they're not joking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything further to say. I even mentioned the news that was not included in the news section, so we already did more than we proposed, and that's even better, even though we started with a delay. So yeah, we moved quite fast through it.
Very efficient.
Yep, very efficient. Well, of course, this show is half German, so it has to be
Of course,
efficient.
of course.
All right, then that's all I had to say. So unless you have something further to add.
I have one last thing to add, which is to take the red pill.
Take the red pill. Goodbye, everyone.